Welcome to What Happens After the Show, where we discuss the previous day in wrestling. And today, we are talking about AEW Dynamite from March 13th, 2024. The show started off with shots of Boston, Renee talking up the night, a limo arrives, door opens, and then we cut away. So it was an interesting start to the show, really led to intrigue. And in the first segment, I was very surprised by this. They started off the show by having Mercedes Moné comes out. You hear the music hit. The fans start chanting CEO. And then, Tom Fazenbaker, how you doing today? She goes into her speech talking about wrestling, talking about the fans staying by her. And it was a great opening segment. She shouts out chaotic wrestling from Massachusetts, and it was a real good start to the show. I was wondering, would we get her in action? But they set things up going further. So awesome start to the show, really establishing that Mercedes Moné is in AEW. The next thing we see, Renee is talking to Samoa Joe backstage. Joe hasn't forgotten the last time that he and Wardlow were in the ring, says debts need to be paid, and Samoa Joe doesn't lose championships in the Garden. Then cuts to an Undisputed Kingdom video where Adam Cole is building up the Wardlow-Samoa Joe match with a fairy tale-like story. If you were watching us live, we are live on TikTok Live. That is where What Happens After the Show happens. If you want to comment, you have to be here live. Later on, the audio will get put up on our podcast feeds, and the video will be put up on our YouTube. Talking about Dynamite, because they kicked off with a huge match. Samoa Joe versus Wardlow for the AEW Championship. Interesting to be getting this match on TV. You almost would have thought, why not build it up for the pay-per-view? But Wardlow went right after Samoa Joe. This was a good, heavy-hitting match. Wardlow looks like he belongs in the ring with Joe. Even though I didn't think Wardlow would be winning this, he definitely put up a good fight, and I'm going to enjoy seeing Wardlow Joe in the ring again down the line. After the match where Joe wins with a coquina clutch, Swerve is fighting his way to the ring through the hired security. Couple indie wrestlers. I thought I recognized Jalen Brandon from Waves and Curls, but I definitely recognized Teddy Goods from that Massachusetts indie scene. And it cuts from this scene to Alex Marvez backstage with the Elite. You got the good cop, bad cop dynamic with the Young Bucks and giving Okada a chance to speak. And this, I think, is a really good way for Okada to be coming into AEW. Looks like a big star, picking his shots where to speak here, and being able to flex a heel persona, saying that Marvez didn't mention Matt Jackson's birthday, and then further requesting that he sing to Matt Jackson. So Okada here really playing up the heel. This was followed up by the Elite versus Penta, Pac, and Eddie Kingston. This was one of the matches I think I was most excited for going into this. It started off with the tease of Kingston tying up with Okada early, but Okada really did that heel thing of getting out of there before he could tie up with Kingston. Pac and Penta had great team-ups against the Bucks. I really miss these two in Death Triangle with Rey Fenix. Hopefully, these two at least stay a team, and when Fenix comes back to the team, they could rejoin as a trio. But this was my favorite match of the night up to this point. I love the Okada pairing with the Elite. I think it helps start Okada off on a good foot in AEW, and almost rehabs the Bucks after the beating that they kind of took in the court of public opinion after the whole Punk debacle. So after the match, Okada held up the Continental Crown Championship Is this the feud going forward? Is this Okada's first championship in AEW? It'll be something to see. Possibly this will play out in something for Dynasty. This was followed by a promo video for Christian Cage and Adam Copeland next week. Already an exciting match because it's Christian Cage and Adam Copeland. Double that with the fact that you're holding it in Toronto, and now you got this video package hyping it up. It's something I've liked a lot over the last couple weeks. AEW really hitting that mark a little better and getting you more excited for these matches. After the promo video, we are in ring with Tony Schiavone, once again talking to Will Ospreay. Jobber Steven, how's it going? We are midway through our AEW review here, and I could take these Ospreay talking to Schiavone in the ring segments for weeks. It really is building up. Yeah, Jobber Steven trying something new out with the display here. Really building up Will Ospreay, making the people like him. Really setting up this Dynasty match with Bryan Danielson. I'm liking just the build-up. Speaking of build-up, we got Deonna Purrazzo backstage just telling Tony and Mariah that this isn't over. She's going to find a partner for next week in Toronto and might even scout them, I believe, on, I'm going to say Collision because this feels a little better than a Rampage match. But Jobber Steven, what was your match of the night last night? What did you think of the show overall? And while we wait on his response, Jay White and Darby Allin was next. This was a match. I saw it lined up for Big Business. We saw it. Jay White set it up on the pay-per-view. And I was interested in it, but I wouldn't say I had any real level of excitement. And Darby Allin all taped up coming out. Jay White dominated this early. The real story was Darby fighting back no matter how bad Jay White beat him up. And Darby really showed that heart fighting back, but I mean, White was all over him, not giving him much time to breathe. And after the match, Guns and Jay White beat Darby down. The Acclaimed interrupt because they were about to break Darby's leg. Jay White attacks Billy Gunn with a chair. Bullet Club Gold beats down Billy and the Acclaimed. And this is followed by the Gun Club attacking Darby's ankle as planned. So seemingly getting Darby off of TV and, getting him ready for his Everest hike. We are splitting up the Bullet Club Gold and the Acclaimed. So a lot of moving parts on this show. Jobber Steven letting us know in the comments. I enjoyed Samoa Joe versus Wardlow a lot. Classic Big Boy Hoss match. That's probably my match of the night. I can't argue with you there. I said it earlier. I thought Wardlow really looked like he fit with Joe in the ring, even though I didn't expect him to win. I enjoyed the match more so than I expected. For me, I got to say that Trios match was my match of the night. And speaking of not my match of the night, Jericho and Hook versus Gates of Agony. This is a match that they set up over the last couple weeks. You saw Jericho and Hook starting off good against Gates of Agony. Gates of Agony, these guys look like monsters, and they should be a killer tag team in there. Hook looked great against the Gates of Agony. Not digging the pairing with Jericho. I like that Jericho is coming out to the music as the Lionheart. I like that he's going more back to that Lionheart gimmick. But to me, Hook is the star here, and he doesn't need Jericho to help him get more seen. This was followed up by Kyle O'Reilly backstage. He will be facing Brian Keith on Collision. I personally am really looking forward to that match. Undisputed Kingdom come in to let him know to do it on his own, that he wants to do it on his own. They are still showing this friendship between Kyle O'Reilly and the Undisputed Kingdom, but I don't know how, I don't know if I'm into that story at the moment. They're either friendly or they're not. It seems weird to have this kind of association. This was followed by Mercedes introducing herself to Hook. We've got Renee backstage with Hook and Jericho. And probably the whole reason that this match was set up was Jericho challenges Hook next week. I am into that match more so, than the tag match here. We go to our main event, which I thought was an interesting choice for a main event, given that Mercedes was debuting for the company. Perhaps that's where the idea came from. Willow Nightengale, we find out during commentary, has her sights set on the TBS Championship. Good back and forth match. Willow gets the win with the Dr. Bomb. Lights go out. Julia Hart appears in the entranceway. Sky Blue attacks Willow. Julia joins in, and we get Mercedes coming out to the rescue. Faces off with Willow. Willow raises her hand. I thought this was great. You've got Mercedes possibly having her first feud with Willow. There's a lot of possibilities, and to me, I'm only more excited about these ladies' division as this time with Mercedes goes on. We see that next week it is Eddie Kingston versus Okada for the Continental Championship. Very much looking forward to this match. Going to be interesting to see that outcome. You've also got Jericho versus Hook on that show. And you've got Christian Cage versus Adam Copeland in an I Quit match for the TNT Championship. So next week's Dynamite is stacked, and they're doing a better job of giving us more stacked shows and letting us know in advance what those matches are going to be. Because it was a knock on AEW for a while that you would know one or two matches on the show, and then day of the show, you'd get hit with 3 or 4 of them. So that was AEW Dynamite this week. Before we start talking about wrestling, I'm going to review Dark Side of the Ring, Episode 2. Starts off talking about Buff Bagwell shooting his dad. Probably one of the more salacious stories that if people aren't aware of Buff Bagwell was something that happened. This was followed up by talking about the male stripping that he did after high school and talking to his wife about her dancing so he can make his way into the business, something that she didn't enjoy and would come back to bite her down the line. They talk about, some of the great tag teams that Marcus Bagwell was involved in. You had Too Cold Scorpio. Then it talked about cheating on his wife, the marriage breaking down, going into forming Stars and Stripes, and then the calf implants that he had that his body rejected. And then moving on from there, you go to talk about the American males. And then you've got this interesting situation in his life where Judy Bagwell was such a famous TV figure as his mother, and then marries a woman named Judy. So he's got Judy Bagwell, the wife, Judy Bagwell, the mother. And his relationship with his mother gets covered going through this episode. Talks about Marcus joining the NWO and how the NWO changed his life. He was seen more on TV as Buff the Stuff. And when his first wife saw Buff the Stuff, she knew that was going to kill any chances of them getting together. Through Buff's career, I always want to call him Marcus Alexander Bagwell, but probably more commonly known as Buff Bagwell. But Buff's career really carried his family. And they talked about supposedly his mom shaving his balls at one point. That was an interesting story. It covers him going into straight-to-video movies. Happens with a lot of wrestlers. He did a few of them, covered his broken neck. Bagwell versus Helms coming into the WWE. One of the biggest names to have a good run. I'm trying to decipher my notes here. Bagwell versus Helms. I believe he had a feud with Helms. I'm going to have to make these notes a little more detailed, and one of the biggest names to a good run. Bagwell had a decent run in WWE or in WCW, came into WWE, probably didn't live up to all the, all the acclaim he had in WCW, but after being let go from WWE covers his indie run, drug struggles, being on the Gigolo show, and then probably the ultimate low for him when his mother died. But luckily, they have the story of him helping out Scotty Riggs at the end. And even though there was a lot of dark to this, you got to see some of the behind the scenes on Buff Bagwell. Not one of the bigger episodes, I would say. Next week, we've got Terry Gordy, I believe, coming up. And that's going to be a very interesting one. Sorry, we do a lot of talking here on TikTok, and that wears the voice out quick. Now that we have finished talking about this week's AEW Wrestling, we will get into the discussions. Brandon Davey asking, when does the Money in the Bank run out? Jobber Steven letting us know July, I believe. Yeah, it is typically a year from when it is won. And it's going to be interesting to see who Priest finally decides to cash in on. Will that cash in happen at WrestleMania, or will they keep it going further? Double tap that screen if you want to like the broadcast. Share this so we can get it out to more people. And if you want to comment live, you got to follow the Working Fans Podcast on TikTok. So, Jobber Steven, have you checked out any of the Dark Side of the Rings yet? I was very happy with Big Business this week in Boston. I thought it was great that you delivered Mercedes Moné right away. People didn't have to wait for that. And, you know, you're setting up future feuds for her, which I think is good. And, you know, it's another week where I come out of Dynamite really enjoying it. They've turned it around, I think, and I just want to see where this continues. I haven't caught up with this season of Dark Side of the Ring. Heavily recommend it. The Buff Bagwell episode is, for me, kind of like a Bash at the Beach 2000 episode where I'm not super excited going in, but then as you see the match, as you see the episode, you know, it's entertaining. So I'm a fan of Dark Side of the Ring, even if they put out an episode that I don't know that I'm 100% going to enjoy. I'm definitely still going to check it out. Did you watch Tales from the Territories? That was one I really enjoyed as well. In the same vein, Jobber Steven, I like Dynamite, and I like the Ospreay interview segments too, but give us a match too. And that's a good point, Jobber Steven. I was saying I could take these interview segments going on, but, you know, I wouldn't mind a Rampage match. Maybe they're keeping him out of the ring until that Danielson match to make him more special. I don't know, but yeah, I'm waiting to see another Ospreay TV match, and hopefully it's not as wild as before, and they give it some time. Like, he gives us a good TV match, and he's not just going balls to the wall every time we see him in the ring. Jobber Steven, how do you feel about this women's division coming around here? I'd like to see more than a couple matches from them a show, but what I am enjoying is you have a nice figurehead now in Mercedes Moné. You've got the great story of Willow and Statlander. You've got the great in-ring competitors as well. You've got Riho, Nyla Rose, Serena Deeb. We're going to see, you know, you got Toni Storm and Mariah May. You've got Deonna Purrazzo. These ladies need to get, hopefully, another show or another match on the show. There's some meaningful stories they could tell. Mercedes is immediately the most popular woman in the division. 100%, I feel like last night really solidified that, showed it to the crowd, and you've got Mercedes is the most important, but Toni is the champion. So once Mercedes gets this match with Willow, what will we see when Mercedes goes up against Toni Storm? Will Toni Storm even have the championship when she finally collides with Mercedes? All questions we're going to be very interested in watching down the line. You know, what happens after the show is brought to you by Game Up Hard Hydration. If you're up in the Northeast New England area, this is as if your favorite sports drink and seltzer got together. It's got full flavor, so it's not like your other brands of seltzer out there. It's almost like its own type of sports drink. 110 calories per can, 1 gram of carbs, 4 great flavors. You buy it in an 8-pack. Find it at your favorite liquor store. If you are in the Jewett City or the Eastern Connecticut area, you can find it at Petromax in Griswold. You can find it at La Bella 2 in Uncasville. Let's get the game up word out there. And Jobber Steven, I would be more invested in Tony versus Mercedes if they do a long feud, trilogy of matches, but that's my preference. I would love to see a trilogy from them. I'm just excited to see Mercedes and her first opponent get in the ring. It's much like Ospreay. You've got this new character coming into AEW, this new wrestler, and you want to see all these dream matchups you have for them. How are they going to compare against the people that have been here? So it'll be very interesting to see. Jobber Steven, gotta ask, did you do a watch along on your TikTok? Because even though we are doing this live on TikTok, it is going to be rebroadcast on our podcast feed, on our YouTube channel. And if we can get Jobber Steven a couple more watchers here on TikTok, it always helps. He's been recently working to pop it off, and we always try and help any other creators that we can. And Dark Side of the Ring, AEW, excited for this week. You know, tomorrow we might be coming back at you at an earlier time. I'm thinking maybe 9:30, 10 in the morning, talking about TNA. We might do TNA tonight. Tomorrow, live at 12 o'clock. It's most likely going to be myself and the man called Dave going live. We haven't even come up with the rundown yet. I believe the initial idea was to talk about second or third generation stars that surpass their parents. I'm sure we will talk about Big Business. I am going to text Dave right now and find out what we are talking about tomorrow.